Everybody, welcome to today's live session and welcome to week 3 of Aloha 25 February. So, real quick, just in case some of you do not know what this challenge is about, I host a monthly challenge here on YouTube and over on Instagram, and every month we focus on one color. This month it's kind of like a non-color because it's black and white, and every week we combine it with another color. So this week is all about black, white, and pink, and this is what we're gonna paint today. It's a skyline with some foliage and rocks and little ducks in black and neon pink. And the goal of this challenge is to work with super limited color palettes, to not have to think about what colors to use, and to maybe focus more on the subject matter of the painting. All right, let's turn the camera around, and then I'll set up my iPad too so I can see the chat, and I'll talk about the supplies and how we'll tackle today's prompt. All right, let's turn it around. Okay, so here we go. Let me set down my sketchbook. Okay, and you can see on the other side I did another one with a little cat in a window. That was kind of like my first version of this prompt. And even though I really liked it, I kind of felt like it was more for gouache, if that makes sense, because of the very opaque black cat in the foreground. And I wanted to do a bit more watercolor technique for today's live stream. But of course, if you're just now looking at the cat and thinking, ooh, this would be nice, and by all means, you can do that, of course, too. But in today's session, we're gonna focus on this cityscape here. Let me zoom in a little more. All right, I have 4 lamps here on my desk, and it's all a bit messy with the tangles of cables, charging cables, and lamps that are pointing in all directions. So let me go over here a little bit. Here we go. My colors, my mixing palette. Okay, next I'm gonna set up my iPad. So I can keep an eye on the chat. Okay, view channel, and then go to the live tab. And here we are. Now I got you in my chat here. Hello, everyone. Hello. Hi, Mom. Okay, and as always, please let me know how the sound is and if I should zoom in, zoom out, all these good things. All right, so for supplies, today I'm using my Moleskine watercolor album. It has 25% cotton and 75% wood pulp. So it's a nice mix of cotton and, regular wood pulp paper. It has pretty thin pages. It's only 200 GSM. And considering that, it can take quite a bit of watercolor washes and layering. I'm also going to use a really big brush today. This is a size 10 mop brush. So you can see this is quite chunky. And the reason I'm using this and painting most of this, albeit small painting, is that I want to be pretty loose, especially with my leaves here and the water texture. So I think if you use a really big brush, you just have to go in and just keep on painting. And of course you can utilize the tip of the brush pretty well for, you know, finer details. However, I will also use a size 4 round brush with a very pointy tip, so we can add those little details here in the plants and the skyline and the ducks, of course. That would be a bit tricky with that large brush. I have a ceramic mixing palette. I'm using only 2 colors today. I have neon pink. These 2 are my own handmade Aloha watercolors, handmade watercolors. So this one is called Maui Neon Pink. You can see Maui Neon Pink in full force here in the sky. This is what it looks like with 3 layers. And I was going to use a color called Lava today, which is a mix of Mars Black and Vine Black, but I couldn't find it. So I am using Shark instead, which is a gray ochre that looks black. I think depending on what kind of black you use, whether it's granulating or not, you'll have different effects here, which might turn out really beautiful. So if you're using a strongly granulating black, you know, you'll have all the nice texture here in the rocks. So yeah, just try out different blacks maybe for this week's prompt and see what the difference is between, you know, those mixes of black and then also the mixes of purple you can make. Let me just hop over to the other side so I can show you what a beautiful kind of mauve purple these 2 colors make when mixed together. And again, it really depends on what kind of pink you use and what kind of black you use, what types of purple you can create. The purple I used here for the water surface mostly, and then also to create the kind of haze around the skyline. Okay, so I have the brushes, the paper, ceramic palette, the paints, and I'm using a colored pencil, a Pilot Color Ino mechanical pencil, which is erasable. I would usually use the pink one so that it would disappear more into the painting, but so for you to see what I'm doing, I'm going to use the purple one today. And look, I made a plan again. A painting plan. So first step, very easy. We're just gonna start with the background wash. So the whole page is gonna be covered with a light wash of pink. And even though this might look white, it is actually from the first layer of really, really light pink. And then we're gonna put in some of the water textures, the rocks and the sky. And once that is dry, we're gonna add all the really dark parts here up in the top part of the painting, the leaves, and then also the skyline and the ducks. So it's gonna be very light background wash and then some more textures for the water and the sky. And in the very end, we'll do the details. Okay, I'm dipping my brush in water, and the Aqua French brushes or quill or mop brushes can hold a really big amount of water. The downside of it is that sometimes, you know, it's too much water, so you don't always want that much water on the paper. And also, sometimes it can hold too much pigment. I'm not sure if you can see this here, but I still had a little bit of black in my brush, and you gotta really rinse it well. You might want to rinse it twice to get everything out. And then I'm gonna go into my neon pink, and rather than putting it right onto the paper, I'm gonna swatch it out first here on my ceramic palette. maybe add a little bit more water and then go over the whole thing. Now this looks very strong, but always remember watercolor dries lighter. However, if you do feel like this is way too much pigment on your paper, you can rinse your brush and dab it a little bit and then just pick up some of that pigment. What you can also do is to pick up the pigment in the area where you want the sun to be later. So you know that this will be a bit lighter than the rest of the painting. Make sure, however, that you do not mess with this background too much. The more you go back in with your brush, the more you'll see that type of work, you know, the brush strokes, etc., if you pick up some of that pigment. So just, you know, you can go back in there, but don't overdo it because otherwise you'll see the streaks later. Okay, so this one has to dry a little bit. Let me look over to the chat for a second. Hello, hello. Oh, Megan, hi. Thank you for your order. I sent you an email, so check out the email. We have two options now with this state of the background. See, it's still a bit moist. So if you want to be on the safe side and control things better, you can let this dry completely before you do the next step. However, if you want a little bit of a, you know, fun experimentation, we can do that. And even though this is not how I did it in my first version, I'm just gonna go for it and test it out. I'm adding a little bit of black to my neon pink. And look what a nice mix that makes. Naturally, the more black you add, the darker your purple will be. But it's just this beautiful reddish mauve purple. It's so pretty. I have some really big chunks of something on my palette. Now, I'm not sure if that's the pigment or the paint or if it's something that was on my palette. mysterious sand on my palette, which, you know, wouldn't be too surprising because, yeah, we do have a lot of sand here at all times. If you want to, you can draw in the horizon line very lightly. You can also eyeball it where it goes, but it's probably a good idea to just put in a faint line for the horizon. And then take your large brush with that purple mix. You can just go left and right to indicate some water texture. And as always with water, the further away you look, the smaller and narrower the lines will be in the water. So towards the horizon line, they're gonna be closer together, and the closer they face you, they're gonna be bigger. Now this is a bit over the top here, so if you want to do it more accurately, you would kind of go from very narrow and very close together up here at the horizon to further apart and bigger strokes the closer you come to the viewer in front. And because we added, or I added these strokes on the paper when it was still moist, we have a bit of a fuzziness going on here, which is quite nice. Now, right at the horizon line, even before you put in the skyline drawing, you can add kind of like what I call a halo for the skyline. This will almost disappear later on because I'm going to add neon pink for the sky, and then I'm going to add the skyline. But it's just a little faint resemblance of some haze going on there in the background. All right, let me turn around my cap that I'm wearing today because I keep bumping into my phone. That's not very conducive to a relaxed live stream when the camera keeps on shaking. Okay, so how's everybody doing today? Anybody painting along? Get a bit closer. I know that some of you already have painted a beautiful skyline. And I have to say, I really adore the different approaches. So I saw one jelly print, which was really cool. One very, very black and white skyline with very sharp outlines and definition, and then just a few neon pink sprinkles as splatters on that. It's really fabulous for me. You know, that's why one of the reasons I love hosting this challenge is to just see all the different approaches, and then naturally I get a lot of inspiration from that too. So that's been really wonderful. I'm just adding a few very light strokes in between here. Okay, I'm rinsing my brush. Rinsing it very well. I'm going to pick up some pure neon pink. Okay. Castine is painting along. Very good. Hi, Alina. And Nina is painting along too. Excellent. Picking up some more of my neon pink. And with the paper still a little bit moist. It's very, very, it's just a tiny bit moist. You can see the only shiny part is here. So you don't want the paper to be too wet for this next step. Hold on, let me just draw in the sun here. So I'm not putting my sun in the center, I'm putting it a bit to the right. And then with my neon pink, I'm gonna put in the sky, some clouds, and I'm going to leave out this sun shape. So just paint around it. And you can see I'm dabbing my brush and also dragging it across the paper. So it's kind of like a mix of a dab, 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 and drag, drag, drag motion. And then with the same brush and load of pigment, holding it a bit more upright, I'm going into the water, left and right, and adding a few streaks in the water. You really have to judge your painting at this point and to see, you know, if your pigment load is maybe too much on your brush, then you can go and rinse, pick up some more pigment but less this time, or you can just rinse with water a little bit. Dab your brush. And you can always have another piece of paper right there where you work and see how much pigment is on the brush before you set it onto your painting if you're not sure, if you want to double check. I also always recommend to draw the moon or sun or whatever round shape you're painting in the sky a little bit bigger than you'd want it to be in the end, because in my experience, trying to get it round always makes us go smaller and smaller. You know, you're trying to get it to the shape you want and you just keep on adding and the moon or the sun just gets smaller and smaller. So just start bigger. And if it's too big, you know, you can always make it smaller. Okay, I think this is good. If you're not happy with how crisp the edges are here, then you can go in with a damp brush and gently push the pigments around to blend everything together. I have to say though, because of the overall very loose approach of this painting, I really don't mind those crisp edges, and I do have them here as well. But just so you know, you can soften everything if you want to. Okay, so I think at this point I have to go and use a hairdryer, because for the next step, everything needs to be really dry so that we can get some crisp edges, which would be the rocks and the leaves, and then of course the skyline and the ducks. Okay, so I'm gonna leave you for 1 minute. I'll be right back drying my piece. And as always, just a little warning here, if you have a lot of water on your painting and you use a hairdryer, just be careful because you might splatter the water and the paint around. So just start, you know, with the hairdryer at some distance and then get closer to your painting. Or let's just, you know, you can also let it dry naturally, of course. Here we go. Always test your paper with the back of your hand to see how dry or moist it still is, because you have less oils on the back of your hand than on your fingertips. And you do not want to get all these oils onto your paper because it's going to repel the watercolor. For those of you who have been watching and following my live streams, I know that I repeat things over and over again. So apologies for those of you who have heard this a lot of times. But, you know, I also do believe that some things are good to be repeated and just, you know, to really remember. I think especially when we're used to doing things a certain way and then somebody recommends a new way, and it's kind of hard to let go of, you know, the old habit. So just as an example, whenever I tape my paintings with washi tape, I used to start at the bottom, for example, and then I would do the side, and then I would do the next one. So they would all be crisscrossed. And whenever I tried to take it off, it would just be all, you know, like a big spider web. And then I was taught that it makes much more sense to tape parallel, left and then right, and then top and then bottom. because then you can take them off like in single strips. I was like, wow, this is such a simple thing, but it was so helpful. But I still, catch myself doing it the old way, even though I know better. Okay. So Alina says she's still on CET, which is great because it's earlier. So is it like 9 p.m., 9:30 where you're at? You know, where I live here in Hawaii, it's so interesting because we do not change the time. Be winter, summer, it doesn't matter. We're always on the same time. So for me to coordinate the live streams, especially in those times where everybody else on the planet changes from winter to summertime or vice versa, I really have to be careful to give out the correct times. And in Germany, for example, they switch to summer and winter time on a different day than in America. So during those 2 weeks or so, it's really confusing for me. But I think so far so good. Okay, for the next step, we're gonna put in the rocks and the leaves, and the silhouette will come last. So for the rocks, feel free to paint in or draw in just a ragged line down here. You don't have to do that, but I always encourage you to do whatever feels most comfortable to you. And then for the leaves, I really free-handed those. But again, if you want a little bit of a guideline, you can, for example, just put a dot where you want this bottom leaf to end, and then kind of just draw a curved line. So along this line, you're going to place a few leaves, and then we're going to create a frame around the sun and go down all the way into the water with this one branch. So you see, this is kind of like a half circle shape, or it's almost like a full circle if you think it across the water like this here. And then we have the rocks at the bottom, and then together we create a frame. And the main focus will of course be on the circle here, because it just pops out of the painting being so white, good contrast, and the dark skyline later on. Okay, so my mom just said that she loves wearing pink and black. For example, a pink jacket or a sweater, and then with black pants or a skirt. Yeah, I love wearing pink too. I mean, it's funny because I used to not like pink at all. Be it art or wearing clothes, I would really not be a big fan of pink, and now I can't live without it. It's so interesting how things change, isn't it? I mean, I was really a big opponent of pink. I could not stand it. But honestly, I sometimes feel that that was more of a being brought up with this slogan of girls have to like pink and have to be dressed in pink, and pink is a girl color. And I was more of a tomboy myself and pretty wild and adventurous and all these things. I mean, in the sense of, being outside, climbing trees, and so I just did not identify with girl pink, I guess, which is really sad because it's such a great color. And then I guess in my 30s, when I moved to Hawaii, because so many things are pink here, I just had to change my mind, I guess. And I think it was more that I was able to finally let go of these prejudices that colors are just designated for certain people or gender or whatever. And now I love pink. And I still climb around in trees, but maybe not as much. The trees here are really tall, so it's more scary. But has that happened to you too? I mean, are there any of you who did not like pink because it was considered to be a certain type of color for a certain type of person or something like that? Okay, I just put in the rocks here at the bottom. And for the plants, we're just gonna start holding the brush upright, just putting down some blobs here across the top. Make sure to be not too uniform with your blobs. You really want to kind of dab your brush and then paint out the corner here a little more, a little triangle over here. Picking up some more water. You can also play around with more water and less water for some variation in the foliage. And then we're just gonna add a few leaf shapes. Very abstract, don't overthink it. Just dab your brush along the line we drew earlier with our pencil. And see, I'm even twisting and turning my brush. So I'm utilizing the whole range of this brush. There is really no right or wrong way for this. Just play around with the shapes. Try to keep it loose. See, I'm barely holding on to my brush. It is a very gentle grip. You can also challenge yourself by maybe even holding the brush in a completely different way than what you're used to just be forced to create other shapes than you would normally do. Can lead to very interesting results. And if you see the sky shining through your foliage, just, go with it. It's, of course, it wouldn't be like that in reality, but I actually really like it. I think it's a very nice effect to have some of that pink shine through the black. But again, if you want to be more opaque on the leaves, kind of like what I did with that window and cat over here, you can just use a lot of pigment and make it very opaque, or you can even use some gouache, some opaque paint. Okay, I'm looking over to the chat. I just asked about the prejudice of the poor color pink. Nina's like, you just told my story. Yeah, right? And Alina, yep. Isn't that interesting? And both of you guys have like pink-red backgrounds in your profile photos. So I assume you like pink now too. Sylvie agrees as well. Same here. Always wanted to be a boy like my cousins when I was younger. I understand you guys so well. As a kid, I had friends, I had girlfriends, I had boyfriends, all of it. And we were just constantly outside, playing outside. Man, what a wonderful childhood. I think back of living close to the woods and meadows and being able to go outside all the time. It was just incredibly blissful. I'm so grateful. I grew up in the southern part of Germany and just very green and out in the countryside. Yeah, just absolutely fabulous. Okay, so I'm suggesting that we switch to a smaller brush at this point, and everybody's like, oh, finally! I'm mixing a little bit more black with water, maybe a little more water. And I'm gonna just add a few strokes up here in my foliage. Kind of like to indicate that it is foliage with leaves and branches. And if you like, you can add a few leaves that are actually shaped more like leaves with your small brush. A few pointy leaf shapes here and there. But the whole trick is to just indicate that it's leaves. You don't have to paint the whole thing in minute detail. Just adding a few hints here and there. Also, the leaves don't have to be connected to the rest. They can just be free leaves floating in the air. I mean, you could also add some dots, for example, because who knows what kind of plant this is. Ooh, I kind of like that. Okay. That's funny. Alina says opera pink is her favorite now. Wow, so that's really something else. You went from not liking pink and now opera pink, which is, I mean, there is hardly anything that's more pink than opera pink, isn't it? So my favorite color is still turquoise and teal, but honestly, pink is probably sharing the throne of my favorite color at this point. I'm not even sure if it's number 2 anymore. I think they're both up there. Okay, I want to go into the water and with a very, very diluted version of my black, and maybe even mixing in a bit of the pink again. Very, very watery. I'm gonna add a few more lines in the water. And now that I have my small round brush, I can really direct these strokes to the spots where I want them to be. Look over here to the ducks. They kind of have this trail, their swimming trail, and it's a V shape. So I'm gonna put this in down here. And this is also an indicator of where I'm going to put my ducks later. Then down here is another duck. If it's not enough contrast for you and you want to play around with that, you can add a little more black pigment. But I feel that this is enough. All right, I'm rinsing my brush and putting it to the side. And we have only 2 more steps to our painting, which is to add the skyline and then also the little ducks. Now, again, if you don't want to risk smearing your painting, I would suggest that you dry it first. Let's see. Yeah, I think I'm fine. It is. Everything looks pretty dry except for this part here. Just gonna try and be careful to not drag my hand across it. And now we're gonna reinforce our horizon line, especially if it's not visible anymore from all our painting over it. And at this point, honestly, you can choose whatever skyline you wanna paint. I believe from the reference photo that this is Toronto, Canada. I've been told that this could also be Seattle. with the Seattle needle. But please, please feel free, and maybe even put in the skyline of where you live, or maybe, you know, a place that you love, have visited in the past, and that has a really cool skyline. Or what I've also seen on the internet, which I find really cool, is to not draw the actual skyline, but to pull together all the famous buildings of one place. Even, you know, in reality, they're not placed next to each other. But for your skyline, you could totally do that. So yeah, just come up with some kind of a skyline. You know, you can also totally make up something, or maybe even put in a Ferris wheel, or yeah, it's absolutely up to you. I only advise you to make it very, you know, the edges kind of sharp in order to distinguish it from the foliage, which is very organic. So you should have some sharp 90-degree angles just to make it easier to distinguish from the foliage. With the small round brush size 4, I'm gonna mix some more black with water. And in this case, more pigment than water, because we want the skyline to be pretty opaque. And at this point, it's really important to check if the paper is dry enough, because otherwise you'll have floating skyline mixing with the sky or the foliage. And then just follow your pencil outline. Drag your brush across for the horizon. For me, dragging my brush from the left to the right is easiest because I'm right-handed and I'm used to drawing and painting this way. But if it's easier for you to do it another way, you can of course always turn the paper to where it's easiest for you. Then for the tower, please feel free to use a fine liner at this point too. You do not have to draw this in with a brush. And you know, for me, it would be easiest to go from left to right. So let me just turn the paper a little bit. Another tip is that you do not have to draw the line in one go. You can just draw little bits and pieces at a time. And you know, we're gonna see one straight line later on. What I'm saying is we're not gonna really pick up on any tiny spaces in between the lines we draw. I mean, if you go really close with a magnifying glass, you'll be able to see it, but it doesn't matter because it's not, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. Same with drawing circles, by the way. If you do it with one line, it's so difficult. But if you just draw several lines to shape a circle, it makes things so much easier. Okay, so let's look at our painting. Yeah, I think I like this upper part here. If you feel like that the foliage is in a weird angle, like it looks like it's behind the skyline, which indeed would be a bit strange, you can just reinforce some of the foliage and put it in front of your silhouette. So just repaint a few of those leaves so it looks like they really truly are in front of your silhouette. Okay, Mom is saying, Keiko-chan, in picture, a duck family swimming in the pond or sea. I love that always. Yeah. I mean, for me, because I love drawing animals, I always try to find a way to put some kind of animal in my paintings. That's why I have a cat in here, and that's why I chose a photo with ducks. So I have to say those ducks were in the reference photo, but of course I was drawn to the photo because of those little ducks. So for the little ducks, easy way to draw ducks. Little circle shape for the head, then an oval for the body. And ducks have like a curved beak like this. So curved line and then go back. That's it. That's your duck beak. And then for the neck, another curved line like this. So head, curved line, going back, curved, curved, kind of like a question mark shape here, and the body. So very simple but very iconic duck shape. And we're gonna translate this to very, very, very small. And remember how we put this shape in here earlier? So we're gonna place our ducks on top of the shape. Little oval, circle. So we are so tiny now. I mean, if, you know, it doesn't really matter that much. It's gonna be birds in the water. But if you want to really go into detail with your tiny, tiny little brush, then following those iconic shapes will actually really make it look like a duck. Circle, oval, and the beak, and the little tail. And please feel free to switch to an even smaller brush. I just like this one because it has such a sharp point. And again, you can just use a fine liner for this part. You know, like a 01 fine liner to draw in these duck shapes. Number 1, 2, and 3. And then a slightly bigger one here in front. Move in a little bit closer. Curved beak, question mark neck, oval body shape, and little tail. I'm rinsing my brush and picking up a very watered down version of this black to add some shadow underneath the duck. Keep this very loose. You do not have to replicate the exact duck shape in the water. And then a little swimming trail right behind the duck. I feel like my duck number 3 is a bit too light, so I'm just gonna go over it one more time. Some more black. All right. Let's zoom out again. Here we go. It's always interesting for me to compare, you know, the first painting and then the second one. I do love the more intense pink sky here, even though, you know, it has crisper edges and some drying edges here. So it definitely looks a bit smoother over here. And I do like the more pink water over on this side. I like them both for different reasons, and I have discovered that it's such a great practice to repaint old paintings. So of course these are just a few days apart, but imagine we'll do this again in a year and how different it's going to look then. Hopefully it's gonna look different, or maybe not. All right, let me turn the camera around one more time to, oopsie. All right, here we go. I hope you enjoyed today's session. As always, I'd be thrilled if you left a little comment down below, even if it's just a few emojis, and give me a thumbs up if you liked the video. And we're going to paint a black and white animal next week for week 4. It's not going to be a live stream, it's going to be a tutorial, but I would love for you to comment down below which animal you would like. Of course, I'm having a few ideas, but you know, I'm always happy to also consider your wishes. So if you have something that you would love to paint with me, then just leave it in the comments, please. All right, I'll see you again next live stream. I'm not sure, it might be March when I do the next live stream, but if you're subscribed to my newsletter, then you will know about it, and I'll leave a link to the newsletter down below as well. All right, have a great start of the week, everybody. Aloha, thank you, and see you next time. Bye.